just want to thank you, Jonathan, for taking the time to chat with us here at the Christian Beat on behalf of you and your group, Chosen Road, all about the new music that you've recently released and other exciting news for you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you all taking the time to sit down with us. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So I do want to start with your album from earlier this summer, It Never Gets Old. And do you just want to talk to me a little bit about when the group first started planning for that project, like what you had envisioned for the project and kind of where it actually landed, if that's same, different, or kind of how it evolved?
Yeah, absolutely. So we feel like even though it's a brand new album and there's been some other albums that have released over the past few years before this one, we feel like that we probably really started trying to collect songs and write the album probably starting 3 or 4 years ago. So it's been in the making for a while. We've wanted to release an album like this for a long time, but we were just waiting for the timing to feel right. There's a lot of original music on it. Every song on the album is extremely personal to us in that it tells a story of something that we've walked through in life or a story that of someone that we know that has walked through something life changing. So every song is really personal, and every song really ends up just speaking to how the gospel informs and influences our daily walk through life as believers. Yeah. So it really did end up landing where we wanted it to. I think that when we started on it, it finished up exactly where we wanted it to finish up. So and I feel like sometimes it seems like we say this about every album we put out, but this is our favorite album. It really is our favorite album as of today. So.
Oh, no, 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 that's great. I was actually one of the questions I was going to ask a little bit later. I'll ask it now, though. I don't want you to pick a favorite track because I'm sure, like, as you mentioned, they're all kind of your favorites in different places and stuff. But, like, which of the tracks do you think is most speaking to you in your current season, walk of life right now?
Without a doubt, current season, walk through life, this day, this very minute, I want to be just like you, which ended up being our first single. That was something that we did not plan on. We did not plan on that song being our first single, but our team, everybody just kind of felt like let's do that one. Which a lot of folks have heard that song before. It's an old Phillips, Craig and Dean song. We're big fans of theirs. It's just great guys, great music. But everybody in the band, except for one member, has a child at home right now under the age of 2. My wife and I, we have an 8-week-old baby. Today he is 8 weeks old. And so that song, it just talks about parenthood and basically, God, as we do our best to raise our children and teach them about you, let them see your son and living inside of us. And so we fail every day. We're not perfect people. We're definitely not perfect parents. And so that's the prayer that we pray. So that song is extremely personal and it speaks to exactly where all of us are at in life. We've got one guy in the band who he has 2 at home under the age of 2, 11 months apart. So God bless his wife.
Yes. Oh, no, that's awesome. That's always interesting to get to hear. And you mentioned some of these tracks. I mean, you've been putting the project together for multiple years at this point. So is there any track that's kind of changed meaning or kind of deepened as, life has happened from when you first interacted with it to now?
No, absolutely. I think the title cut, Never Gets Old, probably is the one. And just that song in general, that's exactly what that song's about. It's about how the gospel is relevant through every stage, every season of life. And so when I first heard that song, which has been probably 2.5, 3 years ago now, heard the
Mhm.
song, I fell in love with it. But then I became a parent for the second time. We have a 6-year-old little girl, but now we've got a new little boy. And so, yeah, so 6 years ago. It feels like being a parent is totally different than it was 6 years ago.
Mhm.
But God's word is still the same, and it informs how we're supposed to live our life. It gives us a lens that we can kind of look through, and gives us a guide to walk by. So yeah, so that song, and I think if you listen to the words of that song, it's one of those you could listen to that song then whenever you become an empty nester, your kids grow up and they move away. The song talks about that and how the gospel is still enough. It never gets old. It's the same today, yesterday, forever. And yeah, so that song is really special.
For sure. You mentioned quite a bit how the songs are so personal to you. I'm curious. I'm sure you've gotten feedback from listeners and stories. Are there any of those kinds of stories that have really impacted you, and you kind of now can't think of a song without hearing in your head some of those stories again?
Yeah, yeah. Just this weekend, we were at the Ark Encounter doing the 40 Days of Christian Music Festival up there. And there were several folks that came up and they said, the song I Want to Be Just Like You. I had not heard that when I was a kid, but my dad used to sing that to me when I was a kid because that was when that
Mm.
song was big. And so they had tears in their eyes and they're like, now I'm raising my kids. And so when you hear something like that, it's awesome. But there's a song on the album that we wrote for pastors. It's called One Willing Soul. And we were commissioned to write that song by the North American Mission Board to specifically encourage rural churches and rural pastors that are in small town churches, churches that in a lot of cases they're dying a slow death, and they're just guys laboring in some tough situations and doing the best they can for the kingdom. And they asked us to write that song to encourage those guys. And so we wrote the song. It's the theme song for a podcast called the Rural Pastor Podcast. And about every week, we get a message from a pastor somewhere in North America. And they're like, that song has meant so much to me and my family. It's helped us. It's reminded us that, hey, what we do, it does matter in the big
Mhm.
picture. And we serve a big God, and what we feel like is sometimes so little and insignificant. And we're just wondering, hey, are we actually making a change? Are we making an impact? They're like, that song just helps remind us that, hey, we do matter, our families matter, and this work here matters. So it's awesome to be able to see a song mean something, to someone that much. The fact that, because at the end of the day, it's just, we're just playing music and we're writing these songs, and to be able to write a song and create music that encourages someone to keep on doing what God has called them to do, it's an amazing feeling.
For sure. Do you get a different feeling at all for having some of those classics and kind of the reversions that you're doing and reimaginings that you're doing versus some of the original songs that you're doing? Is there any bit of a difference there for you when you hear those stories and the connections?
Yeah, yeah, I think that there is. If it's a song that you've sat down and you've actually wrote that song,
Mhm.
um, and you hear that song means so much to somebody, that's really, really, you're like, man, that's awesome. And I mean, God gives us the words, and He's the one that gives us the ability to do it. But that really hits home. But yeah, some of the other songs that we've kind of reimagined, I feel like that a few years back, um, I guess in 2020, we released an album called Appalachian Worship, where we did reimagine a lot
Mhm.
of songs that people are familiar with, but we reimagined them on these acoustic instruments and kind of through an Appalachian lens. And so that's kind of what we became known for is, oh, those are the guys that they do contemporary Christian songs with the banjo. And so the reason that some of those songs are on the new album is because people they kind of expect that, and so we don't want to let them down. We want to keep doing it, and it is fun. It challenges us to be able to. For us with those songs, it's like, all right, so this is how we've heard them on the radio, and this is how the
Mhm.
rest of them knows them. How
Mhm.
can we take them and make them different enough to stand out? So it's a challenge for us musically, and so we those are just fun as musicians. It's fun to try to reimagine those.
Absolutely. I'm curious with this album in particular, kind of where you're looking for it to differentiate itself compared to some of your other work, and kind of where you see that impact maybe being a little bit different, or where you imagine it being different for this one.
Yeah, sonically and just musically, we tried to go a little bit broader on this one. We added full drum sets, and there's a lot more instrumentation on these tracks. And the hope is that we've always tried to, like, first and foremost with our music, we get to proclaim the gospel, and that's the first goal, is we want to share the gospel. The second thing that we get to do is we get to introduce audiences all around the world to bluegrass music, to Appalachian music, and a lot of these people have never given this style of music a chance.
Mhm.
But we always say everybody loves this style of music, they just don't know it yet. And so with this album, we tried to really take a broader brush and just say, hey, how can we make this music appeal to just music lovers in general, not just people who like bluegrass or Appalachian old time music, but people who just love good music of all types. And so we really tried to work hard on the arrangements and the instrumentation just to make it to where, hey, it's just good music. And if you love Jesus and you love music, you're going to like it. And that's fun. Like we were at a big festival just this past weekend, and you might have had a handful of people there. They love bluegrass music. The rest of them, they were just there because they love Christian music. And so at the end of the night, though, everybody was on their feet singing together. And so they put the boundaries down of, hey, I like contemporary music, or I like just the old hymns, or I just like bluegrass music. And they all just worship together. And that's a beautiful picture. It's what heaven will look like. And so we love being able to try to accomplish that picture with our music.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a little earlier, not in amongst the festivals, you're also doing that 40 Ark Encounter event. Yeah. You just want to talk a little bit about some of those recent live experiences and being able to introduce this new album, obviously, and play it live and work through that?
Yeah. So we've done some cool things. We got to play on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry for the very first time back on June 11th. I heard that was really cool. I wasn't there because that was our baby's due date.
Okay.
So I missed out on it, but I heard that it was awesome. But that was a setting where we were in the middle of a bunch of country music fans. And so we were able to give them some bluegrass. They loved it. That was cool, and just awesome to be able to stand on that stage. But then we did a festival also in June called the Big Ticket Festival up in Gaylord, Michigan. And we were fish out of water that day. We were there with Phil Wickham, Crowder, and Zach Williams. And then we were like, all right, let's bring the banjos out. But what was amazing was people just fell in love with it, and the whole place, thousands and thousands of people just lifting their voices in praise. And so it's just really cool to see how this music, how it goes over in those bigger marketplaces. It's just really, really awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there a particular song that you're most enjoying getting to play live and kind of watch the audience interact with as they're being introduced to it?
Yeah. There's a song that we have actually been singing out live occasionally for about 8 years now, and it's called People's Praise, and it is a song that was inspired by the life of a missionary who ended up giving her life. She died while on the mission field in Iraq. She was targeted by terrorists and killed because she was there sharing Jesus. And before she had left to go and serve, she left a letter behind that her pastor said, don't open this unless I don't come back home. And unfortunately, she never made it back home. And so in that letter, she had wrote a poem called The Missionary's Heart. And so some writers, they took her poem and paired it with Psalm 81, and they wrote this song called People's Praise. And so we've been singing that for years, but it's on the new album. We finally recorded it. And it's just really amazing to be able to tell her story, to help her story live on. And we've seen her story over the past several years inspire other young people to say, hey, I want to follow in Karen's footsteps and I want to be a missionary. And so it's cool to be able to help her story live on and share her word. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I know we're coming close to time, so I'll just wrap with one final item here, but just want to give you the opportunity to take a minute or two and just share a message of encouragement, or just what you hope the listeners who are going to come in contact with your music kind of take out of some of this most recent work.
Yeah. So from day one as a band, this is our 14th year of being on the road. And when we started 14 years ago, we never imagined that we would still be here today. We never meant for it to become a career, never dreamed that we'd be able to travel the world and play this kind of music and tell people about Jesus. But that's how big our God is. He can take something that we view as so insignificant and small. And I mean, we grew up playing this music on our front porches. We never imagined that it would go beyond our front porch. That's literally how we started, but we serve an awesome God. And people ask all the time, they say, where is Chosen Road going next? What's next? And we always say, wherever God leads. And we'll be out here doing this as long as He wants us here doing it. But yeah, so the message that we hope that people hear when they hear our music, or if they come and they see us in concert, is just life is truly all about Jesus and making Him known. And that's all we've ever strived to do. That's all we want to be, is just followers of Christ that just happen to play music. And so we hope that we can encourage people to live life the way that life was meant to be lived. And that was following Jesus and seeking his will above everything else.
That's awesome. I just want to thank you again, Jonathan, for taking the time to chat with us. I really enjoyed getting to hear more behind the music for sure.
We appreciate all the work that you do, Jesse, and thank you for giving us the time.